Hi everyone, this is Biz Gormley at EPIP National here in New York. Welcome to our Wednesday webinar today on June 22nd. I'm excited to be welcoming our presenters, Simone and Sneed, for the topic Level Up, learn the management skills that will help you thrive in your career when passion is not enough. And I'm excited to have members from across the country on the line. And going to go through a quick overview of what we do here at EPIP, some housekeeping for today's call, a little bit about upcoming events in the EPIP community, and then introduce Simone, who will take it away to dig into this topic. So welcome to the call. If you are new to EPIP, also welcome to EPIP. Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, or EPIP, is a national network of foundation professionals, social entrepreneurs, and other change makers who strive for excellence in the practice of philanthropy. And our mission is to develop emerging leaders committed to building a just, equitable, and sustainable society. We do this by providing a platform for you guys, for our community, to connect with each other, to learn and practice leadership skills, and to inspire emerging ideas in the social sector. If you have questions or if you're new to EPIP and want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is biz@epip.org, and I would love to talk to you if you're new or if you're just learning about EPIP for the first time, and find ways that we can work together. The next webinar for EPIP is coming in 2 weeks. We have our webinars just about every 2 weeks. The 4th of July is going to throw our schedule a little bit, and we're going to have a couple special webinars coming up later in the summer about our conference as well as our Change Philanthropy partnership. So the calendar may get a little wonky, so please feel free to check out epip.org/events to make sure any upcoming events are on your radar. But our next scheduled webinar right now is going to be on July 13 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's focused on financial management. We're going to be on the line with the Wallace Foundation and FMA, going through their toolkit and dashboard, doing some workshop as well as kind of getting an overview training of how their tools work. So if you are deep in financial management, or if this is a new topic that you want to learn more about, it'll be designed to deliver for anyone along that spectrum of expertise and hopefully be a great opening to a conversation about some of those hard skills that help us succeed. I also want to make sure anyone who's on the call has a date saved for our conference in September. The conference this year is in Baltimore from September 13th to 15th, and early bird registration is open, so please do log on, check out the preliminary schedule, learn a little bit more about the tracks and the vision for the conference, and get registered. If you have any questions, again, feel free to shoot me an email, biz@epip.org. Housekeeping for today's call. I just want to make sure you guys know how you can send any questions in to us or deal with any technical difficulties you may be having. The question box on your control panel is the easiest place for us to communicate while the presentation is going on. So please use that to send in any technical difficulties or questions you may be having. There's going to be a few open-ended questions that we present to you. Please also use the question box to share your answers to those questions. And then as questions may arise for you throughout the presentation or during the question and answer periods that are spotted throughout the presentation, please use the question box to share your questions so we can make sure that they are looped into the conversation and that Simone can do her best to answer them. We do keep polls and questions anonymous, so we're gonna, as soon as we turn things over to Simone, I'm gonna launch a couple polls just to also get a sense of who's in the virtual room with us here. So those and any questions you ask are gonna be anonymous. If you do wanna follow us on social media, we'd love to see your tweets or posts online. The hashtag we use for our webinar series is EPIPWebinar. This webinar is recorded. It'll be in our archive by the end of the week. And at the very end, when you log off the call, you'll be prompted to complete a quick 7-question survey. If you could take the 10 seconds it may take you to fill that out, I would really appreciate it. It helps us continue to provide content that's relevant to you and be sure that we can adjust for any challenges and opportunities that you guys can think of or that you come up against in the call. So please share your thoughts. And without further ado, I'm super excited to welcome Simone and Sneed to present to you guys. Simone is a self-described management geek. She's working at the Environmental Defense Fund. She's a professor at NYU Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. She has over 11 years experience in the nonprofit sector, and she is really an expert in fundraising, relationship management, and management in general. She's also a board member at MISS, and she's going to take a few minutes to introduce herself as well. So I will now pass it over to Simone. And Simone, we can hear you.
Hi everyone, I'm so happy to be here today. As Biz mentioned, this is Level Up, a webinar designed for people who are ready to move past inertia and essentially find a new commitment to their career. Of note, if you already have a notebook or a piece of paper or your iPhone or your Android available so that you can take notes and participate in the activities, it would be great if you had that available. So in a land far, far away, employee engagement is at an all-time high. Your career is driving itself and you are thriving. You feel that your work is about a personal purpose and commitment as well as your professional skills. It feels as if your advancement is not an if, but a when. And you legitimately have a chance to feel fulfilled in your career. It would be great if this was the case for more of the employees in America, but closer to home, this isn't quite true. According to national statistics, 71% of employees are not fully engaged. Companies, including nonprofits, lose over $11 billion per year because of employee turnover. The most startling statistic of all is that 50% of nonprofit professionals leave their jobs and leave the sector. So if we know that most Americans and many people on this call are not feeling particularly inspired or engaged at work, what would it take to feel enthusiastic, confident, and deeply empowered about your work? It's pretty simple: control. I doubt that any of you have heard of Mary Parker Follet, but she's someone who really changed my life. When I first discovered management, I was about 12 years old, and my father, who worked at Kodak back when Kodak was Google, was always saying to me, you know, Simone, if you like power, then you would love management, because management is the art of getting work done through people. And that's all that power and influence come down to. Mary Parker was one of the first women who came up in my research about management, and it's because she really was the prophet of management, or the mother of management. She was born in the late 1800s to a Quaker family and grew up with plans to be a social worker. Along her way, she discovered that the way management was being structured was based on very hierarchical top-down models. So she decided that she would set out and find a new way to manage, and that's called participatory management. The framework for participatory management is based upon one single fact, and that fact is no one wants to be told what to do. So what does this have to do with career advancement? Well, the science of management is about setting goals with groups of people and accomplishing them together through a shared vision, an aligned strategy, and effective implementation. The principles of management that I teach at NYU can be applied to your career and will actually allow you to have a real guide and a plan for how you advance yourself throughout the course of your most likely 50 to 60 year long career. So, what does our journey look like for today? We'll take the next 5 minutes to talk about who I am and who you are, so I have a sense of who's in the room. We'll spend 10 minutes working on what does it mean to set a professional vision. We'll spend 15 minutes identifying obstacles that are getting in the way of your progress. Another 10 minutes designing a strategy to win and have success and build the career and the life that you dream of. 5 minutes for closing questions and answers, and then time for a thank you. In each of the 3 sections, setting your vision, identifying obstacles, and designing a strategy to win, there'll be time for questions and answers, as well as a practical activity. Are you ready to get started?
Yes, I am. Everyone else is on mute, but I'm ready. Simone, just let me know when you want me to run the polls, and I'll send them up.
If you could run our first poll, Biz, that'd be great.
Okay, everyone. So I'm going to pop up a poll now that just gives a chance to understand how far you are into your career. So if you can please choose one of the 3 answers that best describes the length of time you've been in your current field. We'll leave the poll up for about 30 seconds.
Great. So it seems like
in about 5 more seconds if anyone has any last votes to put in. And these are the results.
Wonderful. It looks like about 75% of you have been in your careers for 3 to 7 years. So you're early to mid in your career and early in the grand scheme of things. Biz, would you mind putting up the second poll?
Sure. So actually this poll, just based on the way our system works, the way that we're going to run this is by asking everybody, what do you hope to learn today? So if you could type into the question box, the answer to the question, what you're hoping to learn today, we're going to look for patterns and share them out. So please type into the question box, what do you hope to learn on this call today? Great, keep them coming. Some people are writing in strategies for moving my career forward without losing passion, strategies and specific tools, food for thought for a planning retreat I have with my boss tomorrow to be mapping out work for the coming year. And folks who have had great success in achieving career goals early, how to set new, deeper career goals, how to manage up, make your team more effective, create an action plan, prepare for managing direct reports better, think about new jobs and how to look for jobs that really align with their goals, transitioning from task-based to project-based career, learning how to go to the next level strategically, strategies for advancing the career, marketing oneself to the executive team as being worthy of a promotion, and managing staff who report to me. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Biz, for setting up those polls. And thank you for coming to this call with a sense of what you need to get out of it. Of what I heard, the piece that I think has a deepest resonance for the most people on the call has to do with how do we go more deep in our careers. So much of career advice is targeted to people who are very, very brand new in careers and maybe are not exactly sure what they're going to need to do to move from being a direct report to being a manager to being an executive. And so today's structure will help you to think about what does it mean to live more deeply and be more rooted in our professional selves. I'll tell you just a little bit about my own background. I went to college at the age of 16, and it's not because I was super smart, it's because I was in a hurry. And that hurry really has been a hallmark of my entire career. So the three words that represent me, and I do realize that I don't look like the princess on the screen, but the three words that describe me are restless, relentless, and ready. So I finished college at 19 and went straight to graduate school at 20 and was building my career starting at 21. My first job out of college was working as a policy analyst. And at the time, I already thought I knew everything. But as many of you probably had the same experience, that turned out to not be true. Over the next 3 years, I went from being a policy analyst to a junior level fundraiser and moved to New York City and started raising money. And that's when I started to learn what it would mean to go deeper. The first fundraiser boss that I had taught me the science of fundraising, which previously I'd seen as an art. And so it's that shift to a technical expertise or an issue area expertise that is the first hallmark of advancing your career. The third part about who I am is really about being ready. I'm ready at this moment in my career to step up into either junior executive positions or executive positions, like I have here at the Environmental Defense Fund. And so over the last 11 years, I've learned a lot about how to take these steps and take them apart so that you can turn them into a plan. So let's get started with your vision quest. You'll note that there is a theme here around games and video games, because when you think about it, all your career is a long-form role-playing game, where at the end, you have a chance to win for your life. Peter Drucker, who is one of the best management experts ever to date, said, "The best way to predict your future career is to create it." When I first was in the first 3 years of my career, I didn't have a vision for my career. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be able to pay my very cheap rent in Albany, where I was paying $700 a month, and I still miss that very much. And I wanted to do something that gave back to the communities around me. But I didn't have a sense of what type of meaningful work mattered to me, nor did I have a sense of what types of roles I would be interested in 3 years, 5 years, or even 10 years down the path. So maybe you could take a moment and on your piece of paper or in your iPhone or your iPad or your Surface, write down, what was your initial vision for your career? How far from that are you now? In the world of management, vision sets critical precedents and goals for how you move forward and develop a strategy and execute on that strategy. In our careers, the function of having a personal vision statement come down to motivation, understanding the scope or the boundaries of your career, and providing you a framework for evaluation to say, have I made it there, or do I still have a long way to go? The features of a vision plan are core values, purpose, and primary goal. Your core values should be things that are not easily altered, things that have guided you for a very long time, and ultimately you would describe them as meaningful. The purpose answers why, and your primary goal is about having something that is long-term, reachable, and measurable. And don't worry, I'll give an example. But first, there are some guiding principles about developing a personal, professional vision statement. And at the core is your 8-year-old self. When I was 8, I was living in Albany, New York, and I was nothing but a sack of skinny bones and limbs and a big smile with a lot of curiosity. And that version of myself still inhabits my 31-year-old body. At the end of the day, and at the end of your career, what you'll see as a common thread is that who you were as a child often shows up in the type of work that you like to do. If you were shy or introverted, maybe you've continued that but found a position of strength as a director of institutional giving. Or perhaps you were extroverted and deeply passionate about animals, and now you're the head of the Arcus Foundation. So rather than think that your childhood self has nothing to do with your career, I encourage you, as we develop a vision statement together, to keep this version of yourself in mind. Guiding principle number 2. What are your vows to yourself? Growing up, there were some things I promised myself I would never do. I would never work for money alone. I would never do work that harmed the planet. I would always do work that centered around supporting vulnerable communities and Black and brown communities that looked like me. So what is it that you're unwilling to change, or that your future self would be disappointed if you didn't accomplish? These guiding vows are going to give us critical boundaries when we get to the place that you're actually designing your vision statement. And then last but not least is guiding principle number 3. This is a very helpful Venn diagram that sometimes we forget in the nonprofit sector. Working in the social impact arena isn't about passion alone. It's about what the world needs, and then what you're good at and what people will pay you for. And that blue arrow is pointing to the sweet spot. You want to align what you'd like to accomplish with what the world will pay you for. And as mid-career professionals, you have a unique understanding of where you fit in the labor market. And that reality, that pragmatism, is critical for a long-term career success. So we're up to our first activity, and you're going to need about 2 minutes to complete this, or longer, but we'll start today with 2 minutes. The vision statement defines the optimal desired future state. Essentially, who do you want to be in the future? It ultimately will provide guidance and inspiration to what you'd like to accomplish in the next 6 months, 1 year, and 3 years. It's your North Star. So for example, my name is Simone Sneed. I envision a career where my curiosity and my ambition are assets, where there is room to explore, and most importantly, to be of service to advance work that helps people and the planet thrive. A career that provides me the resources and opportunity to feel meaningfully engaged in a community, support myself and my family financially, and leave a legacy of generosity and partnership. For the next 2 minutes, I'll leave this slide up and encourage you to take a moment to write your own vision statement. Okay. Are there questions right now that people have about establishing a personal vision statement that I can answer?
Go ahead and type them into the question box if you have any lingering questions. It looks like we're good to move forward.
Great. Thanks, Biz. So.
Oh wait, there's a question.
Okay, I'm ready.
How specific can or should it be?
So that's a great question. If you are between 0 and 2 years into your career, it should be fairly broad. It should identify a sector as a priority and the type of skills that you would like to use. For example, I would like to use my relationship management skills in the field of environmental advocacy. However, if you're a mid-career professional, that is most likely already established, and you'll want to be more specific and speak to the type of impact that you explicitly would like to be responsible for. So for example, you may say, I would like to lead a successful sales team in a mid-sized women and girls philanthropic institution. Are there any other questions?
No, just people saying thank you for answering.
Wonderful. So moving along, now that you have a sense of where you would like to go, or where your character will win, we have to acknowledge the beast in the middle of the room, obstacles. Every obstacle comes from one of three sources: internal, external, or access. Internal obstacles, this is true of both organizations and in our career development life. And the internal obstacles are internal to you. So for example, imposter syndrome, which is something very common for both women and for young professionals of color, for any vulnerable or marginalized populations. And imposter syndrome essentially says, I seem to be doing well. It's probably because no one's discovered that I'm actually a fake. And it is this internal narrative that has the real potential to knock you off your trajectory. External obstacles are obstacles that you don't have control over. They are things such as working in a small organization where there's not a lot of room for growth, or it could be a boss who doesn't support you, or a peer who is a naysayer who is impacting your ability to build social capital in the workplace. Access obstacles oftentimes have to do with geography. For example, if you want to break into film and you live in the middle of Idaho, you may not be as successful as if you moved to LA. So access is more about structural challenges, and it can also be about a lack of education. Once you have a sense of the location of the obstacle, I encourage you to take it a step farther to radical self-awareness. As a person, I like to talk, and I like to lead, and I like to move fast. These are three things that over the course of the last 11 years have both catapulted me forward and simultaneously held me back. One story that comes to mind has been about my desire to take on new projects, new initiatives, and new staff all at once. For many years, my goal was to take on bigger projects with more responsibilities as quickly as possible once I joined an organization. Now that I'm mid-career, what I've learned is to really take my time. But this radical self-awareness didn't happen overnight and took 10 years of activities that fostered self-reflection and introspection. If you don't have a system for making yourself and your emotions visible to yourself, such as journaling, therapy, a best friend who's willing to listen, or some sort of chatbot that you can talk with, you miss out on essential opportunities to be the person to address whatever it is that's holding you back that is within your control. So as you're scoping the field and the professional and workforce landscape, I deeply encourage you to focus on how can I radically understand myself better. Speaking of power, in the workplace and in our career fields and the labor market, it's critical to take the time to do a power landscape. So what do I mean? Well, this grid is a grid that I use when I'm teaching my class to help understand power. So let's walk through it. On the left-hand side, you'll see power, ranging from the lower left, where the person or individual with power is weak, to the upper left, where the person with power is strong. Along our horizontal axis is opinion, and on the left side, it is favorable opinion, ranging to the right to unfavorable. If someone has a lot of power and is favorable about you and your career and your position within the company or in the labor market, they are an advocate. And these are the relationships that you want to really cultivate. These are people who are sponsors. And as a reminder, the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is that a mentor talks about you to you, and a sponsor or an advocate talks to others about you when you're not in the room. So they're really the tip of the spear to move you forward. If someone doesn't have a lot of power but they're favorable, they're someone who's a friend to you. They may be a peer in the organization you're working in now, or they may be a peer in another company. But these are the people that really allow you to have the emotional support that you need that you may not be able to get from a sponsor. If someone has a lot of power, but they aren't favorable towards you, and this could include a former boss who's important in your sector, they're a problem. And they're an obstacle that we're going to work to solve a little bit later in this presentation. Lastly, if they don't have much power and they're unfavorable, they're just some haters and you don't need to worry about them. So, with a sense of your obstacles and a sense of your own heel spurs and an understanding of the power landscape, the next piece here is to understand your competitive advantage. Or as my dad would say, my amendment of what my dad would say is you want to be the guy or the gal or the person who fixes the copy machine. So back in the old days, although people on this call may be old enough to remember copy machines, you'd work in an office with a big Xerox machine and inevitably it would get stuck. It would eat a piece of paper, it would need new ink, something would get jammed, a bolt would get loose, but the person who could solve it was the person that was kept around. You want to be indispensable in your career. And the way that you do that is to look around in your company or in your field and say, what work is not getting done? How do you know that? Well, you know that when you're seeing people bring up the same problem time and time again. For example, where I work at the Environmental Defense Fund, people had been consistently bringing up that we didn't have a strategy to engage next generation donors. And I had heard it almost on a monthly basis. So I took it upon myself to develop a strategy for next gen donors. And now I am the steward of that body of work. And this expertise I can use here and if I ever leave. So you want to listen for the squeaky wheel and see that as the opportunity to advance. This is a lesson that comes from business management. When you're doing a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you're essentially doing a very similar assessment, with your goal being, what problem do we solve for the consumer that isn't already being solved? So when you're thinking about either making a career change or going more deep in your current position, the question you're asking is, how do I become the guy who fixes the 21st century copy machine? We're going to take a few moments and do a design thinking project together. For those of you who are curious about design thinking, you can learn more by visiting ideo.org. They're a design thinking firm. In fact, they are the design thinking firm. For activity number 2, I want you to think about the obstacle that you have. Maybe you've identified a coworker who is saying bad things about you, a boss who isn't invested, or a personal narrative that isn't doing you a service. So take a moment and get that particular challenge crystallized in your mind's eye. Great. Now that you have that person or situation clear, we're going to walk through these 5 steps. The first piece, and typically this would be done over the course of 6 or 7 months as a design process, if not longer. So we're going to walk through this quickly, but I encourage you to go back and use this framework to solve other challenges. Design thinking, for those of you who don't know, is a problem-solving approach that centers the solution with the person who has the problem. So back to this obstacle. You have it in your mind's eye. And the first thing that you want to do is empathize. Who is this person? Who are they influenced by? What matters to them? What challenges do they have on a day-to-day basis? How do you explain their behavior? One way to think about it is, if it's a person, instead of asking the question, what's wrong with this person, think, what happened to this person? Empathy is about compassion, and compassion allows us to move past feelings of frustration, anger, disappointment, or rage to the place where we're able to say, I felt that way before, I can understand. It moves us into a solution mindset. Now that you have a sense of what this person's challenges with your and interruptions to your career may be framed, now you can think about, what might this person need so that they can see me in a better light? and advance my career in partnership. Maybe it's that your boss is frustrated by their supervisor. So how could you better understand the work they're trying to accomplish in their career? Or maybe it's that you have a personal narrative that isn't facilitating a long and successful and meaningful career journey. So perhaps what you need are more self-soothing opportunities or better coping skills. The third step in this process is to ideate, which means to brainstorm. So if you could solve this person's problems or this problem that you have internally, what are all the ways that you could solve it? That's what ideate means, to come up with ideas and to be wild and bold and brave about the possibilities. Your fourth step will be to prototype. For me, the place I am in my career and the obstacle that I have is my tendency to rush means that I'm not as cautious or intentional about my decisions as I would like to be. So the idea that I've had is about building time for professional reflection into my daily journaling. So that could be a prototype, is something that I can test, a daily journal or a weekly walk in the woods where I have time to reflect on what I learned that week and how I can better apply it the week following. Last but not least, you'll take these ideas and you'll test them. Now remember that according to the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, habits take roughly 90 days to establish. So whatever system you're testing, be it managing your boss upward or managing yourself inward, give it 90 days to see if it sticks. Are there questions about understanding obstacles and designing solutions that I can answer?
The only question, hold on one second. There's a question just to get into a few more examples about methods for dealing with obstacles and to hear maybe from other folks if they want to type in things that they're doing to overcome their obstacles at work.
There's a lot of different ways for dealing with obstacles at work. The ones that I have found to be most practical have to do with pragmatism. Many times in the first 5 years of my career, I identified obstacles and then very quickly gave all my power to the obstacle. So for example, my boss doesn't want to promote me. It's just because she doesn't like me. Or I never finished that. I don't finish these types of assignments because I'm just not good at them. I don't have the natural ability. Or I'm not able to advance in this company because I don't have a master's degree. It's important to identify which part of the obstacle you have personal control over or the ability to influence, and then to use radical self-awareness to say, how do I get this emotional support that I need to move it forward? Part of this is understanding what influence you can have over the obstacle. And if it's a person, that person is influenced by somebody else in your company. So I encourage you to form alliances. So if there's a supervisor or a coworker that influences the person who's getting in your way, make sure that that person is saying good things about you. Some parts of this are really about message control.
Great. Question, if the obstacle is rushing and or lack of introspection or not taking the time that you're talking about to grow, what are ways to build radical self-awareness in on a daily basis?
That's a wonderful question, and one I'm very excited to answer. As I have struggled with this, I think I have some lessons to share. So many of you probably live in places where you are either using public transportation or you're in a car and you're trying to get every place quickly. So one of the things that I started doing about 3 years ago is that when I found myself feeling rushed at work, I would walk more slowly to the train. It sounds really simple, but it's a way to remind myself that I'm in charge and that I have the ability to slow things down. As young professionals, we are living in a time with more distraction and more busy pride than ever. And so to resist it is actually a radical behavior. So try moving to the next location where you need to be after work today 10% slower than you typically would. Second way to slow down is to develop a personal mindfulness practice. I tried meditation and failed miserably, but what I found is that doing arts and crafts, even though I am very bad at them, helps me to relax enough that I get new ideas and I feel rejuvenated. In fact, there was a paper that came out last week that said that art activities decrease stress and help with mindfulness. So maybe it's time for you to get one of those adult coloring books, some crayons, and make plans for yourself on Saturday or even on Tuesday afternoon during your lunch break. Third, I keep a series of Post-it notes permanently affixed to my computer monitor, and most of them say, slow down. The last example I'll give has to do with understanding where you're doing the rushing. I rush frequently on my emails because I want to get through them all in the course of the day. And that means I'm not only prone to more mistakes and miscommunications, but that I don't have the opportunity to be more thoughtful about my responses and about what work I'm constructing. That's where my draft folder comes in. So now I take the time to pre-draft all of my emails, leave them in my draft box for at least an hour before I send, and then I send them. We have time for one more question if there is one.
Great, there's one. It says, what is the best way to handle external obstacles, such as restrictions of your organization or bureaucracy, kind of political climate type of challenges?
So I'll answer that in two parts. Dealing with political challenges can be delicate in that you want to navigate them in a way that you remain unscathed, but that you maximize the leverage point. The trick to managing these types of political external obstacles is to think of yourself as an objective observer. At the Environmental Defense Fund, one of the things that makes us special and that I'm really proud of is our ability to remain politically neutral when we're talking about the environment. We recently won a chemical reform bill that had to do with regulating toxic substances in everyday products. And it was one of the first and most substantial bipartisan reforms of this current Congress. It was possible because we never took a side. We took the side of science and economics. So if you're working inside of an organization or a political context that is highly charged, for as long as you can, remain the independent, nonpartisan observer. And then when you see how things are about to shake out, align yourself with the party that is going to help you accomplish your vision. The secondary piece to managing these external obstacles that are more like bureaucracy has to do with providing innovative solutions, or the triple win. Last year, I launched a nonprofit called Dream Corps with Van Jones. And what we really focused on was finding ways where communities, corporations, and the public had a chance to win together. And focusing on those triple wins helped us to create more solutions. So if you have an idea on how to solve a bureaucratic challenge, bring it to the table and allow that to be what makes you special and makes you stand out. Thanks for the great questions. We're going to move forward. So now it's time to take what we understand about the vision of where we're trying to go, the obstacles getting in our way, and make a plan for how we have success. Our path forward is about having a strategy, and a strategy allows you to take your energy and apply it to your vision for catalytic results. But it really comes down to flexibility and resilience. Launching a startup with Van Jones last year was one of the most exciting things that I've ever done in my career. And I got there thinking that it was the place I was meant to be for the next 20 years. I had spent about 10 years working in women's philanthropy and was ready to make the shift to environmental advocacy. And this window of opportunity came along. After working with Van for a year, raising $6 million in 6 months, and building out our logic model and staffing structure and budget process, I was totally burnt out. I had been traveling from New York to Oakland every other week and really just wanted the opportunity to be at home with my fiance and focus on the environment. it really was a moment where my dream felt deferred because I wasn't sure what my career was going to take. All I knew is that I was no longer interested in fundraising, which is all I had done for almost 10 years. So it was a real moment of, as my mom would say, kind of, come to whoever it is that inspires you and say, I need your help because I'm a little lost. And what I realized is that I had already had all these skills around relationship management, but I could apply them in new ways. Managing teams, or as I'm doing at EDF, managing our VIP volunteers who are engaged with our boards, advisory boards, and committees. Building a career is about having the resilience for the long term and the flexibility to take advantage of new opportunities. Remember that power landscape? Focusing our strategy on how we maximize the advocates and minimize the problems. So we're going to stay in the upper half of this landscape and focus on strategies for solving your problems. Solving problems comes down to influence. And as I teach in my management class, there are 5 tools of influence. Reciprocity, which means, hey, you did something nice for me, I'll do something nice for you. Consistency, which says, you can trust me. I'm going to be consistent and follow through on my commitments. Social proof, which is when someone says, well, my friends have done this and things turned out well, or my coworker did this and things turned out well. Authority is when you're able to be influential because you're the expert, and even the mere appearance of expertise, such as one article on your own Huffington Post blog or sitting on a panel, convey. And then scarcity, things that we know are valuable and more influential because they're scarce. These tools of influence are going to become critical as you design your strategy, and you'll want to keep them in mind. The second part of strategy that is critical is setting a goal. And this acronym, SMART goals, may be familiar to many of you, but we'll take a moment to walk through it. Your strategy will need to include goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. For example, if you had a goal to lose weight, which many of us do, you wouldn't just say, at some point in time, I'd like to lose some weight. You would say, I would like to lose 10 pounds over the next 3 months to help improve my wellness. And I'll do so by going to the gym twice a week. That's the strategy. But the goal is the specific number of weight loss over a specific time. This is all going to come together during our activities portion. And here we are. You're going to take a moment and build out a personal logic model that will allow you to align the vision you have for your career with strategies to overcome the obstacles. Here's how a logic model works. Logic models include 5 things. Resources, aka what type of investment of time, money, energy, or projects will you need to put in. And then the activities of what you are going to take on and do yourself. And that results in the intent, that concludes with the intended results. The outputs, which are about what you'll accomplish with your planned activities and hopefully deliver. Your outcomes, which is the benefit of what your activities were. And then ultimately, your impact. So what you'll do on a piece of paper, again, or in your notebook, is draw these 5 rectangles. And you'll number them 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you'll start by working backwards. So go back to that vision statement that you had crafted for yourself, and that will go in your impact bucket. So number 5, that rectangle is just your vision statement. Number one and number 2 are the strategies you began to identify during the conversation about obstacles. So number 5 is the vision statement. Number 1 and 2 are the strategies you discussed with yourself or came up with when we're talking about obstacles. Sections 3 and 4 you'll need to complete after the webinar. and I'll make my information available for those of you who have questions. But essentially what you're going to do is say, if I'm going to spend 5 more hours per week doing a professional mindfulness exercise, out of that, I hope to slow down my response rate on emails, slow down my response rate and thoughtfulness for phone calls, and maybe one other item. The outcome of that slowing down will be improved project advice for colleagues or fewer typos. And that ultimately rolls back into your impact, which is the vision for your meaningful career. Logic models are most frequently used by organizations to build strategic plans, and I find them helpful in building a career plan. This section requires a lot more personal time, but I'm happy to answer questions about logic models or about developing this personal strategy that we could answer today.
So if folks have questions, please go ahead and type them into the question box now.
Great.
There's one question.
If you do,
It says, what
okay.
should... Oh, that's not a question. They're just, you're being praised and people are excited to dig in and do more with more time.
Oh, wonderful.
The one
Well,
question coming off of that is if you would be available to talk to people one-on-one as a follow-up.
I will be, and I'm about to share that information. So thank you, Biz, for your wonderful question gathering. These are some of my favorite resources. Marie Forleo is a web-based miniature Oprah for your career. Her videos are all about 5 minutes in length and focus on personal productivity. In addition to being incredibly informative, she's really, really funny. I also subscribe to the blogs for Harvard Business Review and Stanford Social Innovation Review. Legal League is a website designed to help you just determine how to advance your career, and they have wonderful daily content. And I highly suggest that even if you are not a young woman, who is their target audience, that you follow them on Twitter. Lastly, the 2 books that have changed my life in the last 6 months to a year is the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is about how to establish good habits, and then Wander Women by Marcia Reynolds, who is a life coach and academic who looked at the traits of high-achieving and ambitious women and identified what to do if you find yourself mid-level in your career, super ambitious, and not satisfied. If you'd like to stay in touch, which I would love, you can find me at themanagementgeek.com or The Management Geek on Twitter, or just simone.sneed@gmail.com. I'm happy to have phone calls with people, and we can get them scheduled now, but I won't be able to actually have the calls until the first 2 weeks of August. And with that, I really am glad that we had this time together today. I'm happy to answer any final questions, and then to hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Simone. I want to echo the comments that are coming in from our audience that are really, truly full of gratitude. Thank you for giving us practical tools and also some inspirational resources to go back to and continue to dig in on, and for sharing your own story so we can, all, despite being on a computer, all feel connected as humans. So thank you so much from the EPIP community.
Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.
Likewise, everyone, if you have questions about EPIP, feel free to reach out, biz@epip.org. Otherwise, looking forward to having you back on our next Wednesday webinar. Have a great day, everybody.